This is an impromptu talk. I have some issues I want to cover. A few years ago, a psychiatrist who's been my friend for 30 years suggested that I not leave Pittsburgh because she felt I was about to win at the University of Pittsburgh. To me, that's an illusion. Under no circumstances does the University of Pittsburgh have an ethical system that would allow me to win. They don't have fair play, right and wrong processes when it comes to me. So I took my leave of Pittsburgh after giving a gold box of evidence to Michael Bennett, involved in the honors department of the Community College of Allegheny County. Somebody taught me sign language. Another patient of my psychiatrist, and she was attacked and raped. That's more the standard of the University of Pittsburgh than fair play, which would allow me to win. So I know what I'm talking about when it comes to them. One of the things that led me to want to discuss the situation with how Pittsburgh operates is their endorsement through the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette of Donald Trump. This is the day before the 2020 election. By the time anybody looks at this, we'll probably know who our next president is, what the cost of our society of the transition is going to be. I want to just remark again for my listeners that if you see CC at the bottom of the screen, what that means is that closed captions have been processed, and while they aren't perfect, I would suggest that you turn them on because it might help you with some of the text. The issues I want to discuss pertain to my investigations into what was done to me, how I'm being used here in Seattle, and what my injuries suggest about the overall texture of Pitt society. And since I'm dealing with the criminally insane, I'm also dealing with their hoodwinking backup and the very difficult problem that comes with the history of politics of me at the Pitt News during the Reagan era. So there's quite a few issues of difficulty that come up in the cost-benefit of analysis of dealing with some idealism. The ideal being that there's such a thing as fair play and right and wrong. Something that the Pitt legal forces scoff at. I've had a long simmering dispute with their former chancellor, Mark Nordenberg, about what they call the nature of reality, which is a Hitlerian adage. As far as the hearts and minds programs that government used to talk about, the Third Reich has won at the University of Pittsburgh. So there was a woman there named Leslie Katz. Leslie Katz was, they have a Katz business school. She wasn't apparently related, but her father taught there. And they never suggested that I be referred to a deaf psychologist. Her parents never felt concerned about me. And yet, the University of Pittsburgh worked with Fripp of King Crimson, a band, Mr. Rogers, and Ronald Reagan and Trump, apparently, Barack Obama, the Jeffin Corporation, Penis Gabriel, making a long series of sordid and cruel attacks on me so that WQED could manufacture pornography for the Warhols and so on, based on Leslie Katz, who was the Terry Bradshaw of the AIDS attack. Terry Bradshaw was the quarterback for the Steelers. Pittsburgh loves to brag that nothing will ever beat their Steelers. Well, nothing is likely to ever beat Leslie Katz, even though they never used fair processes, even though they never compensated me, even though they tortured me, even though they got Cersei Kennedy killed. Now, Martha Gellhorn once wrote to me, a professor at the University of Pittsburgh, very suspicious one in the English department, who produced the lead player in the NAACP's game of Pussy Ball over Midori Goto, a real slaughterer from Japan. Had a book dedicated to Ernest Hemingway, about Ernest Hemingway. And when Martha Gellhorn, his first and most enduring wife, in my opinion, wrote a long letter to me on a manual typewriter from Belize, his only comment was basically, what business you got with her? It's typical Pitt. The Iowa Secret Service forcibly divested me of that letter, but one of the things I remember from it was she said that America is a large island populated by self-absorbed dummies. Nothing good will come from all that ignorance. Why she was silent about what was going on with Leslie Katz is because she didn't want to believe it, but the fact that she wrote to me showed that on some level she did. My father was chair of the Department of Education of the University of Pittsburgh. He did not believe that you should give up on the prospect of educating the self-absorbed dummies. He believed very strongly in education. He was a ranking naval lieutenant in World War II, Peace Corps leader. The regional director of Amnesty International called him a hero. And yet, the Post-Gazette, who recently endorsed Donald Trump, bragged openly of betraying this man who had campaigned against Germany over what they had done in World War II, bore a Jewish brother, by scribbling, I don't know who, on his obituary and stamping it with the German Green Party, which was on the rear of the obituary, which was clearly perfectly well arranged by Jerry Patterson, his other friends of John Schulman, who was recently arrested for the museum burglary. You're not really jumping to Tacoma. This has all pursued me here. I was devastated. I have no idea why anybody would hurt Cersei Kennedy, but Cersei Kennedy was put to death by these forces. Now, when I got back here, my psychiatrist was certainly right if she was concerned about my fate. I was poisoned in the mouth. There's a transvestite coalition in corrections. After there was a shoot-up at a synagogue in Pittsburgh that Donald Trump visited, put a white rose. White rose were anti-fascists. But they were also people who felt that dog-like bellicosity for communist intellectuals had no place. The coalition who welcomed me here by poisoning me in the mouth, and who have been covering for Leslie Katz, they moved their meeting place into a synagogue. And when Courtney Kennedy wrote to me about Cersei, I responded in alarm because I had witnessed some things here in the lead up to the COVID attack. And my message was delivered with the disappearance of 2 more Kennedys. I'd like to get the far-fetched thing I have to say out of the way. Biden's entourage was rammed with a car in Texas. I've been discussing the fact that when I was first attacked, not long after, Bobby Kennedy was killed and Martin Luther King was killed, a couple of years, while I was being studied by a Holocaust survivor community who gassed me in a place called King's Estate and set up the pornographic mockery that WQED made of my terrible injuries, bragging openly of impacting a coma so they could do it to the white. Joe Biden's family was rammed, and most of them were killed. So the symbolism of ramming the Bidens after my testimony about this comes out is symbolic, not coincidental. And it's a pretty serious problem. But it also goes back to the people who are really responsible for this, who are in London. And the coalition in Seattle are cooperating through the War Hall with the author of the record RAM. If you go back to the days when John Kennedy was killed, this was from the Oswald diary edition of Life magazine. It's making the bizarre claim that Longfellow wrote Mark Twain's books for Samuel Clemens, and says because they look alike. But there's an underlying truth to the theme of doubles that is being evoked. The coalition in Seattle put up a watchdog at the mental health facility where I was poisoned in the mouth, and also took a look-alike of him and Ripper murdered Shannon Harps over what this party of people from Warhol claim as a sacred penny of Yoko Ono, which means that WQED was, of course, working to confiscate, to take hostage the stolen little yellow Lincoln from the University of Pittsburgh and torture me. And they made me deaf. They used symbols of the rerouted motorcade to symbolize revenge for Hiroshima. So, and they have a standing nuclear threat against the Magic Mountain here in Tacoma. So, you see all of this symbolism, and Pitt took their side. See nothing wrong with the kidnapping and torture and mutilation of the son of their chair of philosophy of education. See nothing wrong with working with anybody from Schulman's crowd who can get away with it. They staged an Occupy here. And mysteriously, I was giving this phenomenal book on the history of banking, which could only have come from Trump's collection, I think, in retrospect. What's with the Occupy and the looting? It seems to be costume play by the right wing to get us used to that sort of thing. What's he after, the Hope Diamond? I remember when I was taken to see the Hope Diamond thinking, why would we want that in our National Gallery? But why did they take me to see it? The Hope Diamond is supposed to bring bad luck to the people who have it. Donald Trump's going to take Penis Gabriel's sledgehammer and get that Hope Diamond for his commissions on our old people he get from his buddies in the Kremlin, I bet you. So they don't think much of any of that. In Pittsburgh, I discovered the very interesting discovery of an Auschwitz-type facility called Iron City Brewery on a place called Beth Oven Street. Look back at Jaggr Stoval. Oven, stove, Auschwitz. These people were recreating an environment to show that the weak will never get on the Steelers. So One of these lopers from WQED who specializes in, don't be surprised, hospital violence, said to me, a man who completely unrighteously had had his wife to be taken by these vicious animals from Pitt football and chemically castrated in the city of Seattle. I've lived a long, lonely life of pain that they have inflicted for no reason on behalf of arrested museum thieves. This loper from QED turned in class and said, in Africa, a man without children is considered may as well to be dead. Isn't that a sensitive thing to say to a student who came to you for knowledge? Well, what they like to say is, I feel guilty. And what they did in parandomizing the scenario of warped warfare that they're conjuring, pluck this, pluck that, kill some at the synagogue, kill Circe, making the Yoko Ono souffle for this Warhol crowd, was to move into the synagogue. You see, they're after the idea of the mind, capture the mind, and this is the sort of sicko thing that they've, closed our schools, promoting, but the brazen, open hostility and violence towards our schools was pretty out there. As teachers in our schools, they were using our schools both in University of Washington, the University of Pittsburgh, and their satellites, the community college, to promote hatred and revenge. And the underlying theme is for the Axis, by the way. So what you see in all of this is the symbolism of me as the stone yelling Lincoln. And a black professor who I thought was absolutely fabulous. I have no idea why they didn't give him tenure, except that the fellow from QED got his job instead, claiming he didn't even want it. Was that he broke the mission statement that was coming out of Carnegie Mellon University, particularly Ming-No Wen's syndicate with Warhol, which was to depict me as a white race. I mean, he said, after I turned to ask him, can I write an extensive paper on Fannie Lou Hamer? Your admiration for this woman is obvious. And I've always got A's in my classes. I mean, black issues fascinate me. They're just wonderful stories. But see, she was trying to depict me as a wayward of Pittsburgh's East End who needed to forgive the people who tortured them. And this was sort of Barack Obama's position too, about Leslie Katz, the quarterback for the AIDS attack, and the justification for all this porno on Mount Desert Island, where they used the pornography to make a mockery of the fact that the whole situation was a testing war game that proved it was an attack that had been long planned back when I was taken hostage, and they're not allowing the public to be warned. They're saying, oh, you have an audience of one, you are an empty set, convince me. And they have this injection master from Barking Pumpkin Records. Okay, was Reverend Wright, Wright Brothers, Mr. Wright. Midori Goto will now allow you to attend her lecture because you have forgiven the assassin she sent to rip your head off as a child. So that's the sort of situation we have. And when Cindy Auto confirmed that I had, been wronged from the strategic analysts who were stereotyping me for their ends, he was shot. So there's a black on black crime involved in the maintenance of the Green Party. So, one of the things we see is the presence of the comedians of the Third Reich. Peter Sellers, the house of the attaché of Warhol and Donald Trump, the nuclear magnate, was this James Child who was sent from the University Administration back in Reagan's days. Lived in the house of Sellers. you know, and of course nobody looks at my research unprompted, but I have images from the Japanese cinema system that produced this that turned around the mockery of Charlie Chaplin with Chaplin-esque with Hitler mustaches playing the other side back at you through Japanese cinema. So the comedians of the Third Reich are behind the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette's endorsement of Donald Trump because, man alive, that is funny stuff.